A good mind is a great asset. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Rulamin, along with my group members Shazan Shahid, Roel Ramzan, Ali Javed, and Awais Ahmed. And today we are here to present the topic disposal of asset and consideration received. Now coming toward the section 75, which is on disposal of assets. An asset is considered to be disposed when it is sold, exchanged, transferred, or distributed, or moreover it cancelled, redeemed, returned, destroyed, lost, expired, or surrendered. Also, the transmission of asset by a section or underweiler shall be treated as disposal of the asset by the receipt at the time asset is transmitted. The application of business assets, the application of business asset, including the stock or depreciable asset to personal use, will be treated as disposal of the asset by the owner of the asset at the time that asset is so applied. Moreover, where a business asset is discarded or ceased to be used in business, it shall be treated to have been disposed of, or a disposal shall include the disposal part of an asset. Now coming toward the value of disposal, it includes four items in case. Firstly, the normal case. Secondly, the business to personal or discarded. Thirdly, the leased on expiry or term. And lastly, the multiple assets sold together. Consideration received on disposal asset in normal case of hire off, the amount it includes the amount received plus the fair market value of asset disposed or the fair market value of asset received in exchange. Look at the example. Um, for example, suppose Mr. Imran disposed of the following asset during the year. Having machinery costing 15 lakh was exchanged with a low machinery having the fair market value of rupees 8 lakh. The purchase of heavy machinery paid rupees 3 lakh as a disposed proceed. For the solution of consideration of heavy machinery, the disposal proceed amount is rupees 3 lakh and the fair market value of low machinery is equal to 8 lakh. By adding both of them, we will get the answer of 11 lakh. Now further, Awais Ahmed will continue with the presentation.
Slide next. The business assets, I will tell you about the business assets put to personal use or discarded. First of all, a consideration received by a person on disposal of an asset shall be the total amount received by that person or its fair market value. In such a case that the asset is put into personal use or discarded from the business, then we shall take the fair market value will be treated as the consideration. In such a case where the asset is either lost or destroyed, then the consideration shall be the compensation or damages received for that person. Next slide. Now here's an example. For example, your storeroom had caught fire because of some faulty wiring, and an inventory worth of 1 million rupees was estimated to have been destroyed. Now, the insurance company has paid us a claim of $400,000 to cover up our losses. What would be the consideration here? Well, the consideration here will be the 400,000 rupees paid for us by the insurance company. Next. Now, coming towards leased assets, when we received a lease from a scheduled bank, financial institute, or Madaramba or a leasing company, then the consideration would be the residual value plus the amount realized during the term of the lease towards the cost of the asset. If this total amount is not less than the original, then we will consider it as consideration. Otherwise, we will not. Now, Ali Javed will explain the next slide.
Thank you, Ahmed. I will discuss the concept here, and that is multiple assets sold together. In this case, basically, where where the two or more assets are disposed of by a person in a single in a single transaction, and the consideration received for the each asset is not specified. The total consideration received by the person shall be appointed among the assets disposed in a proportion to their respective fair market value determined at the time of their transaction. Basically, in this concept, we do not know the disposal value of a single asset, but we do know the total value of the multiple assets, basically. And for the computation of the single asset, basically we use the formula of total consideration received. We multiply it by the fair market value of the single asset, and divided by the fair market value of all assets. Go ahead further. Next slide. For this concept, we'll discuss uh, example. In this example, Chirag Packaging Limited sold two vehicles for 335 lakhs. For Honda City, we have 2.2 million, and for Toyota Corolla, we have 1.7 million. We'll calculate the sale consideration for both vehicles. Next slide. For the solution of this problem, first we consider one asset, that is Honda City. We have the total disposal value, and we'll multiply it by the fair market value of a single asset and divide it by the sum of the total fair market value of both the assets, and we have the answer, that is 1.974359. And for the other asset, compute it by having a disposal value of the both assets and multiply it by the fair market value of a single asset and divided by the total fair market value. So we have the answer. Next slide. Okay, finally, I'll be discussing the written down value of the asset in case of exempted income, where the building and the furniture and plant and machinery is used for um, where the building and I'm sorry, where any building, future plant or machinery is used for any purpose of the business during the tax year for which the income from such business is exempted. Depreciation admissible shall be treated to have been allowed in respect to the said tax year. After the expiration of the exemption period, the written down value of such asset shall be determined after reducing the total depreciation deductions. Now I'll call Rohil to proceed further.
Thank you, Alil Javed. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ruhail Ramzan, and I'll be discussing the gain and loss on disposal of assets. So, if the consideration received value is greater than written down value of asset at the time of disposal, then there is a gain. And if the consideration received is less than the written down value of asset at the time of disposal, then there is a loss. So, there are four specialized areas where gain and loss is used or can be calculated. Number one, partial use of asset for business. Number two, how gain and loss on disposal of an immovable property is calculated. How gain and loss on export of depreciable asset is calculated. How gain and loss or on passenger transport vehicle is calculated. So I'm discussing the number one part, that is partial use of asset for business. That how can we calculate gain and loss on disposal. So total depreciation that is calculated on the asset is tolerated as compared to the percentage that is used for business. For example, if the asset is used 80% for business purpose, then 80% from the total depreciation go into business side. There is a formula, that is total depreciation into percentage uses of business. Uh, when the asset is disposed of, the depreciation that is other than business purpose will be added in written down value. There is a formula for calculation of gain or loss on disposal is written down value plus depreciation not allowed, that is for personal use. There is an example that Mr. Imran purchased plant and machinery in year 2009 for 1 million, and the installation cost of rupees 2 lakh on it. There is an incurred cost, and then he started using the plant for business and partially for personal use. The estimated personal use is around 40%. That says there is a business use of 60%. The machinery was sold in year 2024, rupees 9 lakh. So if we have to calculate the depreciation of 2009 and 2019 and 2020, also we have to calculate the gain and loss, if any. So here is the solution. The purchase value of plant and machinery is 1 million. Incurred cost is 2 lakh. So the total cost is 1.2 million. So personal use is 40%. So business use is 60%. The machinery sold for rupees 9 lakh. That is with written down value. So now we have to calculate the depreciation for 2019 and 2020. Depreciation for 2019, the total cost is 1.2 million. That is the purchase cost and installation cost. So initial depreciation according to this law is 25%. That of 1.2 million of 25% is 3 lakh rupees. That is go into business side. Now we have to deduct 3 million from 1.2 million, 3 lakh from 1.2 million. That is 9 lakh rupees. And then there is a normal depreciation of 15%. That is 1,35,000 of 9 lakh rupees. And then we have to divide it in 60% or 40%. That is business is 60%. So the 60% of 1,35,000 is 81,000. And the 40% of 1,35,000 is 54,000 rupees. So by subtracting 9 lakh, 1,35,000 from 9 lakh, we have 7,65,000 rupees left. So depreciation for 2019 for business purposes, 3 lakh plus 81,000 is equal to 3 lakh 81,000. 54,000 of personal uses deducted from overall depreciation. Depreciation for 2020, there is no depreciation for 2020 because whenever you dispose of the asset in that year, you do not calculate any depreciation. Depreciation for 2020 is 0 because depreciation don't calculate in that year in which the asset is disposed of. It is a taxation rule. So we have to calculate the gain and loss of disposal of asset. So the sale proceed is 9 lakh rupees. And the written down value or cost is 7,65,000 that we calculated earlier. Depreciation, that is personal, that is added back in the cost or written down value. That gives the value of 8,19,000 rupees. So by dividing it from 9 lakh rupees, we have gain of 81,000 rupees. Now Fazan Shahid will further continue the gain and loss on disposal of immovable property.
Thank you, Rohil Ramazan. Can you please shift to the previous slide? Okay, so I have a question to everyone. I wanted to ask anyone from here that why do we add the depreciation in the WDV that we presume that is as personal, जो हमने 40% that we took as 54,000. Why do we add it in WDV? Do we have any answer from here? It's an open question to anyone.
क्योंकि when the asset is partly used for business and in your example the asset is partly used for business and partly for another thing, so when we partly use it for business तो जो written down value है वो उस basis पे हम calculate करते हैं कि it is solely used to derive income. Is that
Can I answer? Rizwan?
Yes, you were correct, and Hamza, okay, you can add something. Okay.
I just wanted to add that कि जब हम लोग कोई एसेट को सेल कर रहे होते हैं तो उसका बेशक पर्सनल यूज हो या उसका बिजनेस यूज हो, लेकिन वो यूज तो हुआ होता है, तो उस यूज के लिए हम लोगों को उसकी जो पर्सनल वैल्यू है वो भी हमें उसके अंदर इंक्लूड करके रिटर्न डाउन वैल्यू यूज करनी पड़ती है।
आई हैव टू ऐड समथिंग, आप दोनों ने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा। और जैसे ये अभी स्लाइड पे नजर भी आ रहा है, जैसे कि हम जब भी पर्सनल यूज़ की जो एसेट होते हैं, जब पर्सनल यूज़ में आते हैं, जो उसकी डेप्रिसिएशन होती है वो हम ऐड बैक करते हैं जब भी डिस्पोज ऑफ करते हैं। ये इसका फॉर्मूला भी यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ है, रिटर्न डाउन वैल्यू प्लस डेप्रिसिएशन दैट इज नॉट अलाउड, दैट इज फॉर पर्सनल यूज़। तो ये एक चीज़ थी। और
Okay, Rohel, please continue with my slide. Okay, so moving on, let me summarize what everyone has explained here. Starting off with Ruhul Amin, we started off with what is disposal of asset and how is it defined. Then moving on, we talked about the value of disposals and their 4 cases. Then we talked about how do we calculate the gain and disposal on assets. For example, firstly, it was explained by Rohel that was if asset was used partially by the business and if we had a percentage of business using that asset. So now I will move on to the immovable property. So there are 2 cases on the disposal of immovable property. So first case is that you have to compare your sales consideration that you received to the cost of that asset that you incur. So there are 2 cases. Either your cost can be greater than the sales consideration, or either your sales consideration can be greater than cost of asset. So let's talk about the first case. While your cost of asset is greater than the consideration received, always remember to calculate the gain and loss on that disposal. You have to calculate it by sales consideration minus written down value. It's an open question to anyone again. Can anyone tell me what is the formula of written down value? How do we calculate written down value?
The written down value is calculated by cost minus accumulated depreciation is equal to
Thank you
written
so
down
much.
value.
And
Correct.
if we have initial allowance, so if the asset is acquired in the same tax year, then we do cost of asset minus initial allowance. And whereas if any other case, we do cost of assets minus total depreciation, which also includes initial allowance.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on towards the second scenario, that is consideration received is greater than the cost of asset. Whatever depreciation that you calculate, either by cost minus WDV, either you calculate it with like in that sense, or if you calculate it with another verification method, it would be discussed further. So these are the 2 cases of how you calculate the gain and loss on disposal of immovable property. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is an example of the case number 1, the scenario number 1. So can anyone read the question? Anyone, any volunteer?
Can I?
Cost of
Anyone who hasn't taken part?
Can I?
Yes, sure.
The cost of immovable property is 2 million. The written down value is 9,50,000. The sale proceeds is 1.5 million. We are required to calculate the tax gain or loss on disposal of asset. So,
Okay. Thank you so much. So this is the first case that we talked about, that cost of the asset is greater than the sales proceed. Does anyone from here remember what was that formula? Any volunteer?
Can I tell?
Yes. Yes.
It is the sales consideration minus the written down value.
So yes, looking at the slide, sales proceed minus the written down value would give you the gain on disposal. Simple as that. Moving on to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide tells us that our asset was 2.5 million. The cost was sold for 2.5 million. The cost was 2 million, and the tax depreciation was 900,000 that had been allowed on the immovable property. So we have to calculate the tax gain or loss on disposal. So now we can see that the asset sold is more than the cost of property, which is associating with the second case. Moving on, next slide. Okay, so this is case number 2, where you can see the data given. So the WDV is 1.1 million, sales proceed is 2.5 million, and the cost is 2 million. So we have to calculate the gain or loss on disposable asset. So can anyone who hasn't answered yet tell me, we have taken WDV as we added cost and we deducted depreciation. Can anyone tell me why have we deducted depreciation allowed? Anyone? No. Okay, so
only
no one.
those who haven't answered, या कोई भी कर सकता
Okay, anyone can take the chance. उनके marks लगने हैं तो Hamza, you can give an answer.
डेप्रिसिएशन अलाउड हमने इस वजह से भी इसमें लेस की है क्योंकि जो हमारी वैल्यू सेकंड केस में होता है हम लोगों की जो कंसिडरेशन है वही हमारी उसके अगेंस्ट होती है गेन और लॉस जो है वो हमारे डेप्रिसिएशन के इक्वल होता है
You're correct. Thank you so much. Okay, so case 2 में we could calculate the gain on disposal either directly by whatever is your depreciation, the total accumulated depreciation, or you could use a verification method that I've mentioned over here. First of all, we would take sales proceed as 2.5 million and we would deduct the WDV presumed as 2.5 minus 900,000 as 1.6 million. Then the hour gain is 9 lakh. Moving on, Rohil. Okay, so moving on, this is the last part of the slide, and we just wanted to cover everything that we have discussed. So I made an illustration talking about the value of disposal that was explained by Ruhul, Awais, and Ali. So this is just a quick example where I added everything together so that we can summarize it all. So we have 3 parts where a vehicle costing rupees 1.5 million was exchanged with a low value car having fair market value of 900,000. So moving on, the disposal proceeds was 400,000. Moving on to the question, the second part was the vehicle was purchased for 1.5 million as mentioned above. The fair market value was 1.4 million. What would be the consideration of the asset? And third is the case where multiple assets were sold. Moving on to the solution. Next slide, please. Okay, moving on to solution. This is very simple, summing up what Ali, Awais, and Ruhul explained. Moving on for the first part, what the consideration for a vehicle that we would take would be disposal proceed for 4 lakh as mentioned in the question, and plus the fair market value that is 900,000. So 1.3 million would be used. Second question, answer, what would be the consideration of asset? So whatever the fair market value would be of that asset or that vehicle, we would use that. So that is 1.4 million. So coming to the last part, which was explained by Ali, the consideration for multiple assets. So we would calculate it by 250,000, which was the sales consideration disposal value, multiplied by 110,000, which is the fair market value of one car divided by the total. That is how you get a total of 250,000. I hope we explained your concepts of gain on disposal, and that is all from our presentation. Thank you so much.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, you may ask.
You can ask any question if you have.
We calculate the consideration if we are selling more than one asset. What is the formula used for that?
Can you please repeat your question?
The formula used for that is first we consider the total amount. We multiply it by the fair market value of the single asset and we'll divide it by the fair market value of the total asset.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
I have a question as well.
Yes.
My question is that if you in the case of multiple assets, if you do not if you cannot determine the value of individual assets, how will you calculate the consideration?
Can I answer that?
Same question. Can I answer it?
Yes, you can answer.
Rohil, can you open up the slide? One step before, one slide before. Piche.
Fizan, can I answer?
Anyone can answer.
Yeah, okay. We
Your choice.
basically we know the three cost, the disposal value of the total asset, and fair market value of the both asset in the multiple
Please go to the first slide to answer that. No, this is not one. The part that was explained by Mr. Ruhul Amin.
So,
So that was the first pass for power exam.
so this is
fair market value.
Normal case.
Normal case, backside. Yeah, wala. So you're talking about the slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Siddiqui, was your question relevant to this one?
No, sir, my question was in the case of multiple
Sir,
assets.
she was asking about the multiple assets.
Multiple assets
He was asking about the multiple assets.
Ali
Can I answer?
Sir,
Sir,
that was
मेरा part है.
Okay. Awais को opportunity दे देते हैं. Awais,
If in the case of multiple assets, and we can calculate the total consideration received by that person, a proportion among the assets disposed of in proportion to their respective fair market value at that time of the transaction.
Sir, can I ask a question from a person?
Yes,
Sir,
please.
Ruhail, can you open up the last slide?
last slide. Okay.
Yes.
This one?
1 to 4. Sir, I would like to ask a question from Inam. In the third part, do we consider the fair market value of the first car or second car, or we consider the cost in order to compute the single disposal value of the asset?
Thank you, Ali. Fair market.
Instead of Inam, you can ask a question from anyone else.
anyone, sir, who wants to volunteer.
Okay,
the floor is open for anyone.
Yes,
Anyone who hasn't participated yet.
Sir, I've asked him just because Hamza and he had a similar question. That's why.
Okay, so the question was for part number 3, as you can see, for the sales consideration of a single asset, single car, do we use the fair market value or do we use the cost?
Fair market value.
Using the fair market value.
Okay, so everyone answered, and I really appreciated the crowd response to our presentation. And if anyone else has a question.
Yes, I have a question. Please go to the slide that
sir.
was explained by Mr. Ruhul Amin.
Ruhul Amin.
Sir, that was in the start. Sir, you can ask.
Rohil Jar.
Yes.
Next one.
A normal case? Are you talking about the normal case?
Normal
case. ये वाला.
Yes. नॉर्मल केस के अंदर इन्होंने थोड़ी सी स्लाइड बनाने में मिस्टेक की है, तो कैन एनीबॉडी एक्सप्लेन कि नॉर्मल केस में किन किन चीजों को कंपेयर किया जाता है, कौन सी चीज हायर ऑफ कैलकुलेट की जाती है, कौन सी दो चीजों को कंपेयर करके उनका हायर कैलकुलेट किया जाता है? कैन एनीबॉडी एक्सप्लेन?
सर, इसमें ये होता है अमाउंट रिसीव्ड प्लस फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू ऑफ एनी कंसिडरेशन जो हमें इन काइंड मिलता है, उसको हम कंपेयर करते हैं फेयर मार्केट वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट से।
एक्सीलेंट।
ऑफ देखा जाए
इसका मतलब ये है कि ये जो अमाउंट रिसीव्ड है इसके साथ फिर मार्केट वैल्यू जो बॉटम में आ रही है, फिर मार्केट वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट रिसीव्ड इन एक्सचेंज, ये दोनों ऐड अप होके जो रिजल्ट आएगा उसको हम कंपेयर करेंगे फिर मार्केट वैल्यू ऑफ द एसेट डिस्पोज्ड ऑफ। राइट?
Okay.
So Masood, you are right, very right.